What are some good resources on learning how to determine? Oh, this is a great question. Yeah, if a stock is cheap or expensive, other than Rebel Capitalist Pro.
Just listen to George. Benjamin Graham's work, I think, is a must for everybody to read.
For sure. Intelligent Investor. Yeah.
Yeah. There's plenty other books.
Market Wizards books as well, Chris.
Yeah, like I said, I was going to say there's plenty books. I mean, literally, if you kind of go onto Amazon and you kind of you literally click the Intelligent Investor and it'll bring up like similar ones that are
suggested,
suggested and stuff. So that's kind of understanding equities in themselves as to like whether something's expensive or cheap. What I would suggest, and this is probably more important now than at any other time in my career, and it's a bit concerning, but it's also sort of exciting in a way. And what I mean by this is that if we look today, there's almost by any metric, equities are massively overvalued if you took Benjamin Graham's work into account and said, okay, well, this is what they should be. The thing to kind of get your head around is that part of the reason that is the case is because of these other exogenous factors, if you will. And what I mean by exogenous factors, I mean by those pointy shoes at the Federal Reserve who have distorted money supply growth and all these sorts of things. And so I think it's also very important to have a look at things in a contextual basis. So for example, have a look at so if you've got an understanding of what equity should look like in terms of price to book and all those normal stuff, if you've got that in your back of your head, and then take like entire sectors, because what you're going to find is that in one sector you're going to have a typical dispersion that's similar, right? You take all the tech stocks, they're all pretty expensive. You take all of the energy stocks, for example, on a relative basis, they're all dirt cheap. And so when you take these sectors and then lay them over each other, look at relative values, that I think can point you in the direction of where you should be looking in terms of sectors. Because once you got those sectors right, then you go, okay, well, now I'm going to use Benjamin Graham's work and I'm going to go and have a look and see what bloody makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I think that's
start with the macro, start with the trends in the sectors, and then get into the micro analysis from the bottoms up, as far as each individual company.
I think that makes, because look, I mean, I've got some buddies in the space who are like, there's a mate of mine who I worked with in prop trading back in, when was it, early 2000s. He was over at Deutsche and I was at Lehman, and he's a prop trader then, and since he left the business, and basically he got very, very involved in the tech space, and he understands that pretty well, but like he's had some really, really good times and then some really disastrous times. And really what it comes down to is that he's been very focused on the individuals, and he's not really looked at the overall sectors and what's sort of happening. Because like if you jump into a river and you're just going to get taken with the tide, right? You might go fast if you've got a better boat or whatever, but you pretty much go with the tide. And so you could pick like the best companies, really, really good companies, but if the whole overall sector is experiencing a downtrend because it's cyclical or whatever the case might be, it's tough. It's gonna make your life a little bit more difficult. It doesn't mean you won't be successful. It's just I'm kind of lazy. I'm much more interested in in positioning myself to be lucky.
Right.
So that's the other thing, I guess, that I'd look at. Start with Graham's book, and then start looking at what's cheap, what's expensive on a relative basis, and then trying to educate yourself as to why that might be. Because just something's cheap doesn't mean it won't suddenly become expensive. It might stay cheap for years.
Right.